He was not an athlete.
No, he really wasn't an athlete. He was a small, thin, small bone guy that didn't really play sports. But somewhere along the line in his journalism training or schooling, he got a passion for it, I guess. Because I remember him saying they had a paper there at the university, and I remember him saying he was one of the only people on the campus or in the school that had a car. So he would cover some sports in the Columbia area, back when he was in school, and maybe that kind of.
Now, he went to the University of Missouri.
Right.
And I understand that is a school that has a really top-notch journalism.
That was my understanding
department.
too, especially back then. That was the place to go if you were going to get a degree in journalism, at least in this
So
area
he
of the country.
knew coming out of OMA,
Right.
when he graduated there, he knew that's what he wanted to do.
I guess it did, and the way he went to college there.
But one time I was working for the weekly newspaper, and we was going to the same game for some reason.
Okay.
I mean, that's very unusual. But we go down, and he tells me, we ride together.
Right. Okay.
We go down, and I think he drove, and he says, now, the most important thing is when you cover a game at a small school, you need to know where the telephone is, because the press boxes back then did not have the telephones.
No, they just barely had a building to keep you out of the rain,
And
pretty
if
much.
you're writing your story, what you had to do then, because of the Tulsa World deadline, the game would end around 10, because they didn't start back in until about 8.
Right.
So the game would be over around 10, maybe 10:30, and you had just that window to get it in before midnight.
Yeah.
So you had to do it right then. And a lot of times you'd be the last one to leave the ballpark.
It's very true. I remember going out to the car, and that was the last car. Especially basketball, you could kind of get into one of the offices and use the phone there. But I remember his dad telling stories about him and a guy that worked for him, Ned, would be crammed in a phone booth with a flashlight, trying to read off his story on the phone to the paper, and the police coming to my and say, "What are you guys doing in there?"
That was me.
Okay.
That was me. That's what I was going to tell you. We're in there, and those phone booths, you have to get in, shut the door for the light to come on.
Right.
Well, 2 of you couldn't get in. So the door's open, the light's out, I'm holding a flashlight. Here comes a police car. The light goes off. Hey, what are you guys doing? He gets out, starts walking up, and your dad pokes his head out. Well, hi, Ernie. The cop had been a ball player a couple of years before.
Okay.
And knew your dad. And, I mean, it was all right then.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, what can I do to help you?
I remember, like in certain places, he had specific places he would go, that he knew he could get a phone. Like in Pawhuska, the lobby of the hotel on Main Street was the place. I remember going in there, and sometimes he'd bring his typewriter and type your story. But I'm amazed at how well he could spiel off a story, dictating it to the guy back at the paper, about the game, and it was just amazing. He just flowed off his head the way he could put his story together.
So did you go with him often?
I did quite a bit. I enjoyed traveling, but in some places it was kind of neat to go in because they knew him, they treated him like royalty, had a special table.
They would always announce it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we're honored to have Ernie Spartan, Tulsa World, covering the game. And, that's doesn't happen to everybody.
Nope. He had a great friendship over the whole, this end of the state as far as coaches and.
And he was so kind in helping others, helped me
Yeah.
big time.
Yep.
Showing me, he'd read my stuff and say, now you maybe should have changed this a little bit. Never critical.
Yeah, but he was
But
helpful.
always helpful.
Yeah, and Bill Harper.
Bill Harper,
Ran
Mike Zacharias.
Yeah, a lot of them worked with him. Funny relationship of him and one of the world's writers, Terrell Lester, who was technically his boss at the paper as far as us, working under him. Always laughed at the beginning of the week, during the game week, he said, well, this is where Dad would tell him, well, this is where I'm going and who I'm going to cover, so you can go wherever you want to. Even though he wasn't the boss, he really well picked what games he wanted, and I guess he got to see who he wanted most every time, I guess.
Yeah. And it was always a small school.
Yeah, small school,
Small school.
competition. Like Dad would laugh, if they knew he was coming to town for a game, it must be a big game.
Big game.